know what you're trying to do.
I'm trying to free your mind, Neo. But I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
But until this day, I haven't been able to explain to a Christian, hey, this is the problem that I have with Hebrews. This is the problem. These are the problems that I have with Paul. It's a little bit too, it shakes. It shakes and it becomes uncomfortable to hear that, oh, this guy has a problem with the guy who wrote most of the New Testament, who basically, essentially props up, offers all the rhetoric that a Christian needs in order to make their case. So what I typically say, and so by the law of the Israelites, it takes 2 or 3 witnesses to make a case, at the least 2. I always attribute Paul to Hebrews. If Christians don't like that, they can keep they can keep the anonymous writer of Hebrews. But what I challenge Christians to do, make your case without that one witness, because it's my impression that the disciples of Christ, they learned the law. They didn't preach doing away with the law. And even if we look at James, like he's still pumping the law. He's still pumping
about the law of liberty, though. In reference to the law. Yeah, because he says if
we can go through it.
Right, he talked about the law of liberty. And he says, which is it's not the same thing as the law of Moses. It's 2 different things. Because if you look at, he talks about the law of Moses. He said that if thou, and the reason why I say 2 things is because they're contracts. Remember, terms and conditions and teachings are instructions at that time. Now, the moral construct of it always follow, but there are terms and different conditions that's outside of the moral, in a sense to where these things are tenets to where it's like, like civil, ceremonial, different types of things, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That's law. But when you look up under the New Testament, it ain't going like that. You know what I'm saying? You can't render to this person because you're not sovereign in your own land. How you gonna go and kill a homosexual in America? That ain't gonna work. You know what I'm saying? Not sovereign in your own land, so therefore that doesn't apply to you.
Let me ask you a question. Actually, let's read this. Let's read just a couple scriptures from James 2. It says, verse 2, James 2:8. And just as a heads up, I'm probably gonna call it maybe like in about a half hour. So it says, verse 8, if ye fulfill the royal law according to scripture, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well. Okay, so this is making reference to the Mosaic law. But if ye have respect to persons, ye commit sin. So he's saying if you transgress this law, if you have respect to persons, you're going to commit sin, which is transgression of that same Mosaic law that he's referencing to. If you commit sin and are convinced of the law as transgressors. Number 10, verse 10, for whosoever shall keep the whole law, and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. For he that said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not kill, do not kill. Now, if thou commit no adultery, yet if thou kill, thou art become a transgressor of the law. So speak ye and so do, as they shall be judged by the law of liberty. For he shall have judgment without mercy that hath showed mercy, and mercy rejoiceth against judgment. So he's warning against not following the Mosaic law.
Right.
That's what it sounds like to me.
The moral tenets of the law is something that it's always there. So what he's telling you is, when you talk about the law of liberty, right? Under the law of liberty, it's not saying you have the freedom to basically hold on a minute. He's not talking about that you have the freedom to basically sin. That's not what he's talking about. Do what you want to do. The law of liberty is saying in the aspect of the New Testament, because Christ has freed you from the penalties of judgment that you was due up under that. The law of liberty is saying in the aspect of the New Testament, because Christ has freed you from the penalties of judgment that you was due up under that. And so that's why it's called the law of liberty. Why? Because they have set you free from the law of Moses, which held you hostage. Why? Because you was not doing it. And so
I can't recall when Christ ever said that.
He says, come, all ye that are late. He says, for my yoke is light, my yoke is easy. That's what he says. And then when you talk about what Peter and them are saying in the books of Acts, they talk about the yoke of bondage, basically.
I've never heard Christ discourage anyone from following the Mosaic law, and it looks like in James he's warning against not following the Mosaic law.
He said the moral tenets. Because listen, let me ask you a question.
He doesn't say moral tenets.
Listen, listen. Are you following? James them is under the law, right? The James was when the tabernacle was there. Now, let me ask you, after the tabernacle.
I'm sorry.
After the.
Whoa! This is James. When was James written?
So I'm asking.
Shall we look it up?
Right. So I'm asking you, was James alive dealing with the tabernacle when the tabernacle was what you call was standing.
This is post ascension Messiah. That's my impression.
Right. So if that is the case, then the tabernacle was still standing, right?
So, were we in the new covenant or were we in the old covenant?
For those that were in Christ, they're in the New Testament. I mean, the New Covenant.
So,
for those who are not in Christ, they are under the penalties of the Old Testament, because Christ took them from up under the penalties of the Old Testament to the New Testament.
So we have James warning against not following the Mosaic law. Why is that happening?
Because the New Testament laws, the Old Testament laws tarry until the last thing. That's why the author of the redact of Hebrews says, if you notice, he says, because the New Testament laws, the Old Testament laws tarry until the last thing. That's why the author of the redact of Hebrews says, if you notice, he says, because the New Testament laws, the Old Testament laws tarry. The New Testament, the Old Testament laws tarry. The Old Testament laws tarry until the last thing. That's why the author of the redact of Hebrews says, if you notice, he says, until the last thing. That's why the author of the redact of Hebrews says, if you notice, he says, that's why the author of the redact of Hebrews says, if you notice, he says, the New Testament, the Old Testament laws tarry until the last thing. That's why the author of the redact of Hebrews says, if you notice, he says, ready to pass away, ready to decay. Why? Because the last thing of the law that was standing was that tabernacle.
But I thought the death of the testator signaled the beginning of
exactly. That's what I'm telling you. Now let me ask you this question.
We've only just
the covenants as an allegory. Now, if you look what he says. He says the two sons are the two covenants, Ishmael and Isaac. That's what he says.
What book?
That's in Galatians chapter 5 or 6, I believe. He says these are an allegory. One gender into bondage, the other one gender into I think liberty, or somebody said of that matter. Now, okay. Now, when you look at the two covenants, right? He used that for a reason. When the seed was confirmed, that was Isaac as being the seed that was confirmed. It would have been used as the allegory. What age was Isaac confirmed? Most scholars say that around the time when you look at the counting of Abraham's age, that Isaac was confirmed around about probably like 4 or 5 years old. You know that.
Does this have anything to do with why James is warning against not following the Mosaic law?
I'm going to tell you.
Okay, I'm following you. Go ahead.
Now listen. So he goes in, and I'm talking about the tenets of James is not against that which is the moral aspect of God. He has no problem with that.
Moral aspect of God. What does that mean? Moral aspect of God.
In other words, as far as like the things that shape God's character. For instance, like when he says the 9 commandments that we see that are centered around God's character. Besides, when you start dealing with the 9th, which is I think the Sabbath day. Saying it's more ceremonial, if anything. So it shows the shadow of something that was to come. Right, that's more so ceremonial. It's not. So when you look at the moral aspect, right, the moral aspect was thou shalt not kill and all this other, love this, all that. That's the moral aspect, right? The Gentiles which have not the law, do those things contained in the law.
Well, James here preaches the wholeness of the law. If you offend at one point, you have offended it all, right?
Right. So let me ask you a question.
So it's all the Mosaic law.
Right. So that's why he's making the distinction between the Mosaic law and the law of liberty. Because let me ask you this question. Right. So that's why he's making the distinction between the Mosaic law and the law of liberty. Because let me ask you this question. Do you do the whole entire law right now?
I already told you that I could.
So you couldn't, right?
Right, but
so
they
let me
could.
ask you a question.
Listen.
Hold on.
They could.
The
the tabernacle was standing. They could, but you guys
that's the reason why you're not. That's the reason why you're not. The law of liberty is something totally different, bro. The reason why this is why Paul talks about the law of liberty just as well too. Now let me ask you a question. So if that is the case, then if you according to James, you offending the law, ain't you?
I don't have the tabernacle.
Let me ask you a question.
I don't have a temple. I don't have a temple.
If you had it or not. Listen, he told
he did.
Israel.
When he wrote this letter, the temple was still standing, was it not?
But that's not my point.
You just think about it. Going down like this.
Well, that's the reason why. That's the reason why he can hold them against following the law.
Hold on, no, he can't. He can hold them regardless. Listen, bro. Just because the tabernacle is not standing, the fact that it's not standing shows that you. The Levitical priests were in. The Levitical priests were functioning. The Levitical priests were functioning. Right,
he could tell people.
Listen, bro. Listen,
but when the Levitical priests were scattered, you can't.
That does not matter, bro. Listen,
because the Levitical priests are part of the law, isn't it? Right? Isn't that right?
Hold on, listen, bro. Listen, stop for a minute so you can listen to what you're saying. Just because you can't do the law because you don't have the tabernacle, that doesn't matter. You still fall up under, bro.
Traditionally, the Levitical priests, they did their sacrifices. It was either in the tabernacle or in the temple. And when James was speaking, he could say, "Hey, keep following the law because the temple was still standing."
But you're not listening, bro.
But for you to ask me these questions, look, I'm not an Israelite in the time that James was writing his letter.
It doesn't matter, bro. If you outside,
why doesn't it matter? Why doesn't it matter?
Listen, I'm gonna tell you why. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Listen, bro. There is no excuse. The fact that you've been scattered and you say you're an Israelite, right, shows that you wasn't the keeper of the law. The Israel broke the law. And because they broke the law, you're scattered. So Christ told them, you're not going to worship here nor in Jerusalem, bro. Because you're
in the captivity. Right. So just like Babylon.
They wasn't, hold on, listen, bro. Listen, you're right. They wasn't in captivity then. Christ prophesied.
They weren't were they sacrificing during the Babylonian captivity?
Oh, brother, if you would just let me speak and listen, bro. Listen. Christ tells them, listen, you not gonna worship here in this tabernacle. He said, he said the time is coming when you're not gonna worship in Jerusalem nor in this mountain, right? Why? Because he's telling them they finna come up out of that. Why? Because of the people who was over Israel was causing Israel to sin. Why was they doing that? Because they was causing them to walk after their traditions other than what the law was stated, what was stated in the law, right?
Say that again. Say that
exactly.
again.
The people they was causing to walk after their traditions other than what was in the law, right? And not only that is too, they rejected Christ. So when the people rejected Christ,
Fair enough.
they wasn't walking according to what the biblical text was saying. In other words, the biblical text said that you're supposed to follow him. They did the opposite. So in reality, they rejected Christ. And when they rejected Christ, they rejected to what the law said about Christ. So is you really following the law? So Moses is going to judge you. Why? Because you're not following the law. Now, and in the law, it referenced Christ. Now, here's the thing. Now, we have it to where in the New Testament, right? Now, I was saying that when you look at what James is saying, James realized that the law, what the law of liberty is. Now, that's why he says,
where is the reference to that even stated? Like, where is James pulling that from? So we can understand what that means.
The law of liberty. Paul and all them know what the law of liberty is.
Oh, but so it's not part of anything that's originally Mosaic law. Then he's not pulling it from the law and the prophets.
No, he's not. Listen, when you talk about the law of liberty, in Hebrews also tells you what the law of liberty is. Because Christ, if you look at it, he's telling you what Christ brought you up under, that was due unto you, and you was set free from that.
If James was writing this letter to me, I should be able to understand what the law of liberty is just by reading James. I shouldn't have to go.
He's telling you.
James, was it not?
Okay, so listen. Up under the law of Moses, right? If you broke one law, you was what you call, right? He said you offended the whole law, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, if you offended the whole law, are you a doer of the law?
You're a violator of the law.
You a violator. So let me ask you a question. Are you violating the law right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
You a violation, ain't you?
Yeah. But that's according to a judge. And the Father is judge, right?
So if
He's
Moses,
judging.
he says
He's judging the works.
Moses will
So
judge
we're
you. Hold on. If Moses was to judge you right now, because he says that Moses will judge you. So if Moses was to judge you right now, right, would you be in violation of the law?
probably, yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Why are you sitting even under, why are you trying to sit in that seat? I don't understand that.
No, the Father judges
Get it out.
Israel. The Father judges, God judges Israel according to the law. He determines whether Israel is righteous according to the law or not. He found them guilty.
Oh, so the Father gonna judge Israel according to the law. So if the Father judges Israel according to the law, is you guilty for offending the law then? Because now you ain't really stepped into something now.
But understand that the reason I'm undergoing the curses. I'm undergoing punishment.
Did Jesus say
because
Moses
of the sins of my ancestors?
Did Jesus say
that's
Moses
why
was gonna judge you?
So the curses are it's affliction, it's a scourge for violating the law.
Is you violating it now still?
I'm undergoing punishment, but like I bathe. Let me speak.
You what you call?
No, but you're not my judge. I'm according. So if you were my judge, and if you were to go in my shower, you could see that I have a bar of soap, and that bar of soap was made from pork fat, and that's probably unclean. If I were to partake, if you were to catch me eating bacon, you could say, yeah, according to the law, that is unlawful behavior, and you are guilty. You could charge me, but the God is the one who charges and condemns iniquity, and he's the one that pardons iniquity. So understand that since we agree that Israel is going to be a nation again, there's a point where the punishment of these curses is going to end. This is a scourge. This is he's pulling his remnant is in the furnace of affliction, so that when they finally come into the land, it's like, okay, we need to. They will be repentant of their actions.
So did Christ say Moses was going to judge you?
So when we come back into the land, we will do the law. We will get a chance to righteously serve the law. That's what the prophet Zechariah is saying in Luke chapter 167-75. We will be able to serve in righteousness. From under all. Go ahead.
Did Christ say Moses shall judge you?
When he was talking to the Pharisees, he was saying that. Yeah, he said that.
All right, so listen. If Moses was to come back and judge you right now, what's up with it?
He would find fault. Go ahead.
Right, he gonna find fault. So listen. If that is the case, he says, if thou be a doer of the law, then you should be justified. But you can't be justified because you ain't a doer of the law. That do a law should live therein.
Well, it's God who justifies. It's God who.
That's
who
what.
justifies.
Right. So listen. If God is judging you by the law of Moses, then you can't be justified then, because you're not doing the law of Moses.
The elect. It says the elect in Ezekiel 6:36, 27, 28. It says, "I will put my spirit in them, so that they will walk according to my statutes and ordinances."
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Has God, is you walking in God's statutes and ordinances right now?
I can't.
So is God's spirit in you?
It's God's spirit in me. According to 36, 27, 28, like I'm not able to follow his commandments. He's judging his elect. His elect is being sealed, or it's already been sealed from the.
You know what, brother? You know what? I don't even listen, brother. I'm gonna tell you what we gonna do. Let's have this conversation behind closed doors. Let's talk to each other, bro. Let's do that. You know, we can have conversations. I would like you to come back a lot of more times if you'd like to. I think we should have this conversation behind closed doors. I think it'd be more edifying between me and you rather than us going personally or doing it live. Rather, I think it'd be more edifying, to be honest, brother. We had it live. We can still always talk live, but on some other stuff, let's just have personal conversations because it's a lot of stuff that I don't know. It's a lot of stuff that you don't know. You know what I'm saying? It may be some stuff you can tell me that I don't know or stuff I can tell you, but I think that we should have this conversation on a more personal note, to be honest.
I have no problem. I have no problem with that. And just for the record, I think this was one of the more constructive and meaningful conversations that I've had with a person from online. Just for the record.